Thank you. Zell Kravinsky is an interesting man. One morning, he snuck out of his house and gave his kidney to a stranger. His wife found out about it when she read it in the paper. She was not pleased. You see, Zell had developed a habit of giving things away. He earned over $40 million and put some of it away for his 4 kids' education, then gave away $40 million. In 2002, he convinced his wife to divest most of their income. She was a psychiatrist and said, okay, I guess I'll see 100 patients a day, when she found out how much he was planning to give away. But despite their riches, they had never lived extravagantly. They had a modest home in a Philadelphia suburb, and they drove used cars that were over 10 years old. His wife also chose to live below their means, but she would need to convince him once in a while to spend a little money when the car was so dangerous that she didn't think that her kids should be riding in it. They gave over $6 million to the Centers for Disease Control. They donated an 87,000 square foot apartment building to a school for the disabled in Philadelphia. And they donated properties worth about $30 million to support a school for public health at Ohio State University. But somehow Zell felt this was not enough. He learned it was possible to do more. He learned that he could give a kidney. He calculated the risk. It was about 4,000 to 1 that he would die. It was about 250,000 to 1 that someone in his family might need his kidney later on. But he knew that the odds are that another person's life would be saved. He considered the calculus and decided it was worth it. Now, he was not the first to do this. Around the year 2000, Joyce Rush, a nurse with the Indiana Organ Procurement Program, who understood the risks or lack thereof quite well, she proposed herself to a leading transplant surgeon at Johns Hopkins, who was initially reluctant to discuss it. Give me a call and we'll consider, he told her, thinking he'd never hear from her again, only to find that she called and called, and it was not to be put off. A deeply spiritual person, Joyce said that she felt tapped on the shoulder by God. It was something practical and relatively easy she could do to make a big difference in the life of another person. So after a battery of psychological tests and bioethical consultations, she was finally allowed to donate one of her healthy kidneys to a 13-year-old boy. Joyce and Christopher are both alive and kicking today. And although a few people have followed in her footsteps, the number of non-directed donations remains relatively small. Just a few dozen are performed each year in the United States. The need for organ donation is great. Over 89,000 U.S. patients are currently on the waiting list. Nearly 4,000 are added each month. Every day, 17 people die while waiting for a transplant of a vital organ such as a heart, liver, kidney, pancreas, lung, or bone marrow. Because of the lack of available donors in this country, 3,886 kidney patients, 1,811 liver patients, and 457 heart patients, and 483 lung patients died in 2004 while waiting for life-saving organ transplants. In light of this, we're taking a special collection today. While Chelsea plays the piano, several surgical teams will move aisle to aisle and gather the harvest. You may give up to 3 organs. Your choice. The major world religions all stress charitable giving. Giving an organ might be the ultimate Buddhist expression of non-attachment. Buddhism, the scriptures of Buddhism write, in accepting the true dharma or ethical practice, I may abandon body, life, and property and uphold the true dharma or ethical practice. And Jesus told his disciples, if any man would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whosoever would save his life would lose it. And whoever shall lose his life for my sake will find it. So, heart donations are fine, living heart donations. In Confucianism, the master said, the determined scholar and the man of virtue will not seek to live at the expense of injuring their virtue. They will even sacrifice their lives to preserve their virtue complete. So if any of us hold that we have the virtue of charity, you should give your life for that virtue. Hinduism says every sacrifice is a boat to heaven. There you go. And in the Quran it says, you will not attain piety until you expend what you love. And whatsoever thing you expend, God knows of it. And in Jainism, as water surely will wash away blood, so the giving of food to the homeless or virtuous saints will certainly destroy the sins incidental to a householder's life. So the more you give, the more sins you get forgiven. I think some of our sins are worth a kidney. Maybe even more. From Deuteronomy, in the Old Testament, it says, if there is a poor man, one of your brethren, in any of your towns, within the land which the Lord your God gives you, you shall not harden your heart against the poor brother, but you shall open your hand to him and lend him sufficient for his need. Some people need kidneys. Some people need lungs. Whatever it may be. I added the kidney and lung part. You shall give to him freely, and your heart shall not be grudging when you give to him, because for this the Lord your God will bless you in all your works and all that you undertake. So if you give, you'll receive a blessing. For the poor will never cease throughout the land. Therefore I command you, you shall open wide your hand to your brother, to the needy and the poor in the land. Now, Joyce gave her kidney because she felt she was touched on the shoulder by God, but Zell Kravinsky did not give for any of these reasons, though Jewish by heritage, his father was a socialist and an atheist and imparted a sense of fairness and sharing, but no particular religious motivation for this sacrifice. Zell thinks about what is the greatest good for the most people. In an article about Zell in the New Yorker, Ian Parker wrote, by the spring of 2003, Zell had become a man with no such illusion. It seems to me crystal clear that I should be giving all my money away and doting all my time and energy. Kravinsky said, and he speculated that failure to be this generous was corrosive in a way most people don't recognize. He said, maybe that's why we're fatigued all the time, from the effort of disregarding the greater needs of others. Maybe that's why we break down and suffer depressions. We have a sense there's something we should be remembering, and we're not. Maybe what we should remember is that other people are suffering. In the recent weeks on the news, it's been impossible to forget that other people are suffering, and this congregation has given to help those people. But is that how we should live our lives? Always mindful of the suffering, always feeling a bit guilty whenever we have something. Do we need to give almost all we have to others? Part of the big controversy about Mr. Kavinsky is that he went against his wife's wishes. Do we have a higher obligation to our family than to others? After all, she didn't need his kidney. Why was it any of her business? Now, when his kids get old enough to realize that they could have inherited $10 million each, they might be a tad bit resentful. But it wasn't their money anyway. But we face this every day. I balance the safety of my family versus having a hurricane survivor live in my home. I throw away more requests for money than I respond to. I have a family to care for. All of us have to ask, what is the highest good? For some, it's our security. If we choose to live on the edge of poverty, what happens if there's a real catastrophe? Should we build a rainy day fund, or should we give all of our extra money to charity? If we leave ourselves too vulnerable, then we will be soon in need of charity and perhaps a burden to society. The choir sang an interesting song today about sacrifice, about being a sanctuary for God, about giving it all to God. And some people, when they think of what is the ultimate in giving, God generally tops a lot of people's lists. But I wonder about this type of piety. The type of piety that says, take my will and make it thine. This type of piety that gives all to God. Because it seems that takes a lot of effort, and perhaps giving all to God could distract one from giving to humanity. A sense that I've said my prayer, I've done my obligation, and it's finished. Why give to a God who presumably already owns everything? Some people give in order to get their reward in heaven. We heard the Hindu scripture, every sacrifice is a boat to heaven. But that doesn't seem like charity to me at all. Some give to avoid punishment. I think to give because you're threatened, that sounds like coercion. And to give in order to get a reward sounds like bribery. But then again, does motive even matter? Which gift would you rather receive? $10 of pure altruism, or $100 given to you out of guilt? What if in the grocery store, a homeless person gives his last dollar to hurricane relief, and the millionaire in the next aisle also gives $1? Are those gifts equal? Should we give because it makes us feel good? Or should, as they say, give until it hurts? I saw a fundraising capital campaign brochure for a church about 10 years ago, and they were raising funds because they needed a new air conditioner and heating system. And so their brochure said, give until it's comfortable. And then, should we worry about how our gift is used? What if the hurricane relief is misspent? What if a non-hurricane dog gets some of the dog food we donated to the Humane Society yesterday? Are we going to be that begrudging of our gifts? Are we able to give and let it go? When it comes to giving, there are many factors. How much one gives, how much one can afford to give, the motive behind the giving, who you give it to. There's lots of people asking for money these days. How do we know which one? And I've heard questions about respected organizations, and then I've heard questions about should we give through the UU fund, which eventually will be turned over to a bigger charitable organization because we don't have the people to actually do the work. Or should we give directly to those bigger organizations? How do you give? Who do you give to? And how is your gift going to be used? Zell made sure that he went to a hospital in the inner city of Philadelphia to thus increase the odds that the recipient of his kidney would be a person of color. Do we choose? Is giving to the United Negro College Fund a better gift than giving to your alumni, to your college that you graduated from? Both are good gifts, but you say, how particular? Where should you give? How should you give? How much should you give? Almost anywhere where you're giving, someone can come up to you and say, you're wrong for giving that way. You're wrong to giving to animals when there are so many people that are in trouble. You're wrong to giving to this organization who's helping people because they have horrible practices in equal opportunity for gays and for women in their organization. Almost any way that you give, you might be doing something wrong in the eyes of someone else. Because there is so much to give to. Zell gave to Ohio State, which troubles me, coming from the state of Michigan. Each of us has to determine what's important to us. What do we have to offer? Time, money, a kidney? How will our lives be a gift to the world? In true UU form, I'm not going to give you the answer. But at this time, ask for more questions from you and perhaps some of your answers. Anybody, what do you think about Zell?
Hey, Charlie. When I was a medical student, I happened to be in Boston when the first job for the kidney was ever done. And that began the whole movement. And it's gone around the world now. The other problem is that there are many people in other parts of the world who offer their organs, like in India in particular. But there's no way to detect how good they are and how safe they are. And then the other thing you can't do is give an organ to somebody if you're in your old age like me. They won't take it. You have to be young and healthy and offer a kidney. Something else. Not a heart.
back doing some real estate now where he gives a lot of his profits to charity as he earns more. But I think he's probably been chastised enough. He got really vilified in the press of being a selfish, self-serving person to do this grand gesture. And he had the temerity to say, yeah, it kind of feeds my ego to give. I think all of us at some point say we give because it makes us feel good. And, you know, he admitted as much, and that only furthered the firestorm around him. And so in some columns I read that he was perceived as a very selfish man indeed for giving his kidney for these personal reasons. Jim.
Charlie, in the paper this morning, there's a big section about Charles Darwin, and some people here read it. But he gave us incredible knowledge, and it made him physically ill. If you read the article, it's very interesting. He was vilified. He actually had a vomitorium in his writing studio where he could go and vomit when he got so upset. That's what it actually made him ill. And yet he gave us all this this incredible knowledge. And this is another form of giving.
Yeah. Because, you know, Albert Einstein had a horrible family life, but he gave us the universe. And all of us, when we give, will be imperfect givers. David.
I think at least as important in my life, the question of giving is the question of getting. How do I get my money? What do I do with my labor? How do I get my clothing, my food, my shelter, my education? I think if more of us paid more attention to that aspect of it also, the question of giving might find less.
He said the question of how we get what we earn is very important too. I want to call on people in place.
Hi, I was recently in Harris Teeter grocery store. They've been collecting for the United Way. And when you purchase your groceries, they say, would you like to donate $1 to United Way? And it is my practice to say, absolutely not, as long as they support organizations that discriminate against gay and Muslim people. The interesting thing is how people respond to that. The cashiers often look like,
It's just my job to ask.
why are you yelling at me? And I've done this for a couple of years. About 3 weeks ago, I got asked that question. I said, absolutely not. We put job on my nose out. And the guy at the next register turned around and said, that's right. And I realized that if you have principles about what you're willing to give to, what you support, and you're willing to voice them, someone who may not have even thought about it. I mean, the United Way does good work. We know they do. But there's going to be a consequence for them turning their head away from the things that are important to me. And my consequence is I don't support them, even though they do good work elsewhere. And I guess that's part of what I'm saying. It's like, sometimes you need to tell people why you give as you give. So maybe they'll think on it. Maybe it'll resonate. Maybe it'll change.
And
I think,
please stand so we can
I'm
hear.
sorry, one of the most recent spiritual teachings I've kind of pursued has to do with intent. You know, the intent with which you take any action is very important, and the energy around it is very important. And so, beyond that, I think sometimes and it's very hard to do when you're passionate about things, is to just divorce yourself from the outcome. And that is very, very difficult to do. It's hard when there are scandals that come up from a lot of organizations that we have trusted for many years. It comes out that, they've got executives that are buying large homes and cars and so on. But that doesn't really change my intent about why I gave the money to that organization in the first place. And, at some point there is an issue of just faith that what I'm doing and what we're all doing and the purity of the intent
Ready?
I have two thoughts on giving. One is that any giver in any form of giving, in any manner, can be an instrument of example that creates the ripple effect. If you show by example that giving can occur, then others see what you've done, and they too will give, and those will give, and those will give. So you've actually created a greater gift than what you had in your hand. The other thought is in response to the concept of giving feeds your own ego. If others know about your giving, perhaps, yeah, look at me, how great I am. But I know from experience that giving when no one but me and my maker know that I did it, that is a gift to me of another type. Because in that instant, or those times, I know that I have lived to the best of my ability as a human being without asking anything back. And that in itself is my reward, and it's not ego.
May we continue this conversation with each other and with those in the community. At this time, let us rise as we are able and sing hymn number 331, Life is the Greatest Gift of All.